Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Heart-Based Business Show. I am always so appreciative when you are here with us, and we have a lot of fun today because we are going to talk about how to downsize or how to change your living situation so it's more conducive to your needs. You may be finding that since you're home all the time with family, that you may need a place for your kids to have their schoolwork that they're doing. And I was laughing today because my daughter-in-law sent me a picture, and my grandchildren, one of them was in a chair with his feet up, sitting in front of the fireplace. And the other one was on the couch, had a computer in his lap and had a blanket over him. And he looked extremely comfortable. And I thought, wow, why didn't I get to go to school like that? That's pretty cool. So that's what we're going to talk about, is how to make your space more available to you, or how to make your space suit your lifestyle right now. And I think what's happening in our world is going to change everything in the future. And if you aren't thinking about how you can change your space, I'm extremely surprised. And I have a sense that you're going to probably be ready to do so very quickly, especially after you hear our special guest today. So let me just get a little bit of business over with, and then I'll be right back with you. And welcome back. I'm just so excited about this show today because we so desperately need it, right? We so desperately need it. And some of us are really finding out that now that we're home all the time, that we've got a ton of clutter hanging around. And even I've been purging and getting rid of things, but I'm kind of lucky because I live in San Felipe, which is in Baja, Mexico. And instead of having to take my things to Goodwill or Salvation Army or something like that, I just walk them out the door and give them to our cleaning ladies that are here. And it's kind of odd when I see them wearing them, though. I have to admit that. But I know I'm doing the right thing. It's helping them out. And I get to clean out my house this way. You just wouldn't believe how much they've received in this past year, because I've had a lot of time on my hands to really look at the situation that I'm living in, what's working best, how I wanted to set up my office, and the changes I wanted to make with my home so that it's more comfortable. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. My guest today has been in the interior designer and lifestyle design for 35 years. So she's going to have some really good tips for you. And what she does is she creates a new lifestyle in your home. Is that pretty cool? It's like your home's all new, but you didn't even have to move. Or you may find out that you do need to move just to get more space so you have more air. And I was talking to her a little bit earlier, and she was talking about how baby boomers are downsizing and the younger generations are all upsizing. So that works out pretty good. And so today we're going to talk about what my guest is a specialist at. And she's written a fabulous book called Downsize Your Life, Upgrade Your Lifestyle, Secrets to More Time, Money, and Freedom. How much freedom would you like to have? Well, let's find out from my guest today, Rita Wilkins. Mm-hmm. Hi, Rita. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Charlene. I am so excited to be here with you, and I love your intro.
Oh, thank you.
I think what you were talking about in giving away your clothing or whatever it is that you're downsizing, you're decluttering. What better way to give it to do that than to actually give it to people that need it?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And I love that because, we, of course, do have Goodwill. We have all of those places, and they too need it. But when you see someone wearing your clothing That must, touch your heart. Right now, when I downsized from my very large home to my tiny little apartment here in Philadelphia, I could see my niece using certain things, my children using certain things, and then a Hispanic family that worked for me for years. I could see their family sitting around my big kitchen table. So that's the joy of downsizing, decluttering, and giving things away.
Yes. And I keep telling people, I don't know why they buy all this stuff in the first place. Have you? I mean, you probably hear it all the time with the people you work with, because they spend their whole lives working to buy more stuff. And then when they get into their 60s, they start giving it all away. And it's like, why do they work so hard to give everything away? It makes no sense to me. But maybe they think that they're invincible and they're never going to have to do that. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
You're bringing up something really important, because I was one of those people. I continued to buy more, bigger, better, built a big house, a 5,000 square foot home. And then after a trip to a third world country, Senegal, to visit my son, I stayed there for a month. My life changed completely, because for the first time I saw that people have nothing, but they were happy. So after living in this big, beautiful home and surrounded by, designer things, and in my world of design and architecture, for 35 years, I have been around beautiful things. But after I came back from that trip, everything changed. It was like the lights went out. Nothing meant the same to me. And so it took me about a year to downsize. But it also took me about a year to discern, why did I buy all of those things in the first place? And here's what I concluded about myself, a baby boomer. We baby boomers did create the consumer society, because we were making more money. We wanted bigger cars, bigger houses, more stuff. And I fell right into that trap. But what I discerned was, having a building with my name on it, having a big house, having all of this beautiful stuff meant I was successful. That's what I had told myself.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, it wasn't true, because I was actually happier when I was sitting there on the ground, her kitchen table, versus mine that would sit 12 people. And so it really did, it turned my head completely around to say, what really matters and who are you really? And so what I was able to discover in that downsizing journey was the impact of living with so much less. You actually live more, which is what my kids
Absolutely.
and, I am a proponent now of living with less, not necessarily minimalism, but living with only those things that matter to you.
Mm-hmm.
And if you were to start, with one shelf in your bookcase, and say, if I had to pick one thing out of those 10 things, which one would I pick? And then you go to the next shelf, the next shelf. And it's really interesting, because you realize, I have so much stuff, but I don't need it. Someone else might. And it doesn't really make too much of a difference to you anyway. You just accumulate
Exactly.
for the sake of accumulating.
And then you got to figure out where to put it. That's one of my favorite phrases, Rita. And when somebody says, "Oh, I'm going to get this," or "I'm going to do that," then I go, "Where are you going to put it?" That's kind of my famous phrase. I even say it to myself. Oh, that'd be kind of cool to have. But where am I going to put it? And the way I see it is, my kids, when I pass on, my kids are going to have to deal with all this stuff. And so I just kept getting rid of more and more and more stuff. And now I live pretty lean. I have the furniture I need. I use every piece of what I have. And, you were talking to me earlier about having a living room that has absolutely no use whatsoever. How many of us had living rooms like that, right? And only the very important people got to walk into the living room.
Yeah. So you've said a couple things that are really important. And one is, and you're unusual in that you are living leanly right now, because I believe we're around the same age group. But many baby boomers are still living in the big house still. And I'm not denigrating that at all. But if you are questioning, do I really need all of this? And that's the journey that you might go on. There's a woman who wrote a book. You might have heard about her. Well, the book is called Swedish Death Cleaning.
No, I haven't.
Margaret Manson. I know it's a horrible name, but it's a compassionate way to downsize and declutter. So when you have children or grandchildren, that are older, people that are starting their homes, you call them and you say, "I'm going to be downsizing. Do you want any of my stuff?" And then you have a party, so to speak, and you have a pad. And then they say, "I do want that. I don't want that." You start with your kids first and then
Mhm.
your immediate family and everything. And what that does is it gives you the license to give it away, because you might have been saving it for them, just assuming, of course, they would want it. But the reality
And they never want anything.
and it hurts at first, but on the other hand, I think it's very important to start that process now. So it's called Swedish death cleaning, and really the process is very compassionate, because it allows them to say, "Yes, I want it," or "No, I don't," and it gives you the permission to let it go. So anyway.
Yes, I'm looking at my poor stepmom who has to move out of my dad's house, and they were both pack rats. So she says, "I can't even start until I know I have to go." And I'm looking at it, it's over 4,000 square foot ranch style house. And it's just because my dad was keeper of all the family furniture, all the family stuff. And I don't know how she's going to get rid of it, because there's like Hummels that people collect, and there's what do you call those other things? Royal Daltons that people collect, but nobody collects anything anymore. So they're not even any value to it anymore, which is kind of a shock, right? Because that's what that was their thing.
Probably spent a lot of money for it.
Oh, a lot of money.
Yeah, that's a great example, though, of if you don't deal with it now, your children will have to in the future.
That's right.
As a baby boomer, you hear about, taking care of everything before, just, and that usually has to do with finances and insurances and everything else. But I think another responsibility that we have is to also start decluttering. And you mentioned something else too, and that was about the unused spaces in our home. So as an interior designer, because I have interior design, downsizing design, and lifestyle design, those are the three buckets of my company. And on the interior design side, for many, many years, I've walked into homes and they've got this beautiful living room, and I might say something like, "How often do you use it?" Well, the national average is 3 or 4 times a year. Then you walk into the dining room and say, how often do you use that? Well, maybe 3 or 4 times. That's a lot of real estate in a home to not being well used. And so that actually is exciting for me as a designer, because that means I found some space that we might repurpose in a way that's more useful, more functional for their particular lifestyle. So how could you repurpose a living room? And right now, with everyone working at home, it could become a home office. It could be a library. It could be a homeschool area. It could be a music room. How can you repurpose your dining room? Well, frequently the dining room is immediately next to the kitchen. And many people right now are saying, well, this kitchen is just too small. And so then I look at that dining room and say, well, what about if we just knock down that wall? And then you have a bigger kitchen. So anyway, the whole idea of lifestyle design and interior design, it all kind of melds together, because no matter what, we're designing people's spaces or we're designing people's lives. And when you can impact the way people live, work, and play, that's how you change lives. And right now, everything that we're going through with COVID, people have been in place for 9 months now. And they've noticed things that for many years, it was the piles, it was the paint on the wall, it was the kitchen was too small, or this room didn't necessarily work. They're now noticing all of those things. And rightly so, because your home should work for you. And I mean, it's always about the functionality of a space. In addition to looking pretty, it should function well for you. So anyway, when you talk about empty spaces, I kind of get excited because, how can we, for that particular client, um, adapt that room, repurpose that room to make their lifestyle better?
So, Rita, what would you say? What are the plans that people are liking best in order to get some quiet space?
Okay. So for over 20 years, we have been designing and building the open plan. Everyone wanted an open plan where you could be in the kitchen, you could kind of be in the breakfast room, you could kind of be in the family room, so everybody could be together. Well, now that COVID struck, they're asking exactly the opposite. They're saying, how can we close up these spaces? So you may be in your home and it may have an open plan. And many of the solutions that we're creating right now have to do with how can we create a divide. So barn doors are popular right now. The glass partitions are very popular right now. Not, it doesn't work in all cases, but anything we can do to create a visual divide, some privacy for that office, for homework, whatever it is, and sound abatement, because noise travels in those large open spaces. My home was a large open space and I didn't have to deal with that. But if I had to renovate it today for that very reason, I already know how it would be renovated. But what's quite interesting to me, and we started talking about it before the show, was in terms of new home construction, builders are being asked to build individual rooms again. So for many years, we did away with the dining room. We did away with individual family rooms, but now people are actually wanting homes that have more individualized function and spaces. So it's just kind of interesting. It all has to do with a shift in the way that we're living, working, and playing. And then it's also creating a demand on the marketplace to have something that really works better for them. So there's always ways we can retrofit an existing space. But in terms of what's being built new or what's being sought after now are some of the older homes that have a lot of small rooms. So this could be homework, and this could be your office, this could be his office. Versus right now, everybody's in one space, and it's making a lot of, it's just creating chaos. And also just the visual of seeing the kitchen, seeing the mess, it impacts your productivity. So you could just see how all of these things are intertwined. But I think that the movement really will be to build slightly larger homes again, and also to build more individual spaces. And here's another key thing, is that no matter what, that we can have outdoor spaces. So, the patio is now, another area that, there's cooking, there's, fire pits, there's everything. So it's another room outside. And I think because we're trapped, so to speak, in our homes, people are looking for being outside and being near green. And of course, we create green space within the interior as well. So sanctuary spaces where you just, you want to be alone. And so all of these can be created within existing spaces. We just need to know what matters most to people, which is really what design is all about.
Now, what do you think is going to happen? We might have another 6 months to a year of what's going on right now, but what do you think is going to happen after it shifts? Do you think people will go back to the open space? What are your thoughts?
Well, there's always a desire to all be together. And I think a man in my elevator today just said, I can hardly wait to hug people again, because every time I saw him, we were together. And so I think there's going to be a certain period of time where, we're going to want to be together. We just want to have family gatherings again and everything. But then the reality is that many people are choosing not to go back to the office 24/7. Many people are going to choose to live at home. So I think we have to play that out. And of course, it's going to be on an individual basis. But I think just generally speaking, many people are going to continue working from home. I hope kids can go back to school and actually be in a classroom, but many people are choosing to homeschool and liking it.
Mhm.
So we've got a lot of changes coming up. I
You
don't
know,
think,
of people that are liking homeschool, I'm talking to moms and they're just over the top. They're having so many challenges because
yeah,
now they have to be a mom, they have to be a teacher, they have to do the homework. That I mean, it's so they had no idea how much work a teacher does until now.
yeah, yeah. It's a challenge. I think everything is changing, and so I think you just have to play it out. But all of my life as a designer, part of what I do as a designer is you listen
Mhm.
and you observe. And so right now we're kind of in that listening phase and that observing phase. Like, how are people shifting? How are they changing? So we're seeing a lot of people right now saying, I want to renovate my kitchen because this kitchen just, two of us in the kitchen, it just doesn't work. Or, the master bathroom seems to be another big one that they're renovating. But we, we have to be listening to where the pain is. And
Mhm.
right now, pain is not just space, but the pain is clutter.
Yeah.
you know so people are noticing that those piles of magazines and books and toys and everything else, and they're looking for ways to, number one, declutter, but number two, how to organize the clutter. So whenever people started decluttering a project, I always say edit first.
Mm.
So when you think about your closet, unless you edit, you're basically moving the clothes around in the same way again. You might put them in a different color or something like that, but it's not helping anything. So you have to edit first. So I think for the last 9 months or so, a lot of people have started decluttering, which
Mhm.
gives them that sense of empowerment because they feel a little bit more in control of their space. The impact of it is, number one, you can find things. Number two, it also helps with productivity.
Mhm.
So if you think about your home office, if you organize and declutter your home office, it becomes more efficient. You work better, you feel better, and the output is better. So, all of these things are so intertwined.
Yeah, I know. And, it's just people are vacating the cities like there's no tomorrow. And I don't blame them. I just can't even imagine when you think about, I just think about San Francisco, particularly, where everybody's living in those tiny little lofts with a couple of kids. I mean, it's one thing when you can be out, you can go out to dinner and you just stick them in bed. But it's another when you got to be there all day long and try to live with the kids running around all day under your feet. And so a lot of them are moving out of the city. So it's going to be interesting to see how that all works. I'm seeing that in New York too. So how's that all going to work? Because the cities don't get the taxes anymore. But who wants to live in a tiny little 800 square foot place? That's just
Yeah,
ridiculous. You
yeah.
can't even breathe.
Well, I am living right now in an 867 square foot apartment in a beautiful section of Philadelphia. But I am part of that movement that will be moving out of the city next summer. Um,
Mhm.
and so much of my decision has to do with the fact that the restaurants are closed, culture is closed, and will it be opened up again? Probably, but probably on a much more limited scale. There was a time when I first moved to the city a couple years ago, I would go to the theater twice a night.
Mhm.
So go in the afternoon, and restaurants were open all 24/7. It's not the same anymore. So lifestyle is what is directing a lot of that move. Now, and I'm in the baby boomer generation, so where will we be moving, and where are millennials moving? The two bigger generations. Um, there is an interesting movement happening right now to um, 2 and 3 tiered cities. So I live close to Wilmington, Delaware. My son
Mhm.
and his wife moved from Manhattan to Wilmington, Delaware. And
Wow.
number one, it was very affordable, very walkable. It's a little bit of a town like flavor.
Mhm.
And they have many amenities, not the same as the big city, but they also then started to raise a family. So there will be a movement to second and third tier cities, And also one that I'm seeing right now that I'm really excited about myself is villages. I call them Hallmark villages. So
Mhm.
if you're a Hallmark viewer,
I love that.
you know what I'm talking about, right? Yeah. So to be able to know your coffee shop people and know your hardware store person, and but it's a movement back towards the villages.
Mhm.
And builders have caught on to that, which is quite interesting to me because they are building villages. Now, you can't force a village, but you can put all of the amenities there that it's attractive to a buyer. Um,
Mhm.
there's just so many movements going on right now. And I think there's so much up in the air. You have to kind of pick where do you really want to focus. And I particularly like watching the movement of baby boomers and millennials because we're so similar, and that's really interesting because we're supposed to be so disparate, but we're really not. So
I
anyway,
think it's only
it's
when it comes to work that we're so different, because baby boomers were all about making the boss happy and millennials are all about making themselves happy. It's very different when it
yeah.
comes to work, but millennials
What's so
are all about
yeah,
family, and the baby boomers were too all about family. I think that's where it comes together.
right. And also when you put them together in the workplace, and we've done over the years many dental and medical practice. So when you had the older doctor, the father or the mother who started the practice, then the child who now has graduated, when you put that together, it's kind of the perfect marriage because you've got someone who's very strong in technology and the other one might be very strong in relationships. So when you put those together, it's like a perfect marriage.
Hmm.
Um, yeah. So and also just in building, builders, there are a couple of builders in Baltimore, I think particularly have caught on to the idea that you can build the same building and you can have millennials on that lower level, a little less expensive, lower level finishes. On the upper levels are the higher level finishes, and those are the baby boomers, So it has to do a little bit with budget, but their tastes are quite similar. Very
Hmm.
interesting. Yeah.
Very
And
interesting.
now that we're all merging to live with less, which, the whole millennial generation has, you know, they will probably never, ever accumulate them like we did. And they're very cautious buyers. And, when they buy, they research the heck out of it, whereas we just bought and bought and bought and bought. So they'll never be like us. And now that we're downsizing and decluttering, and they'll never, so we are going to have a meeting of the minds right there.
Hmm.
And probably
Well,
we're
and
all
they
going
don't have the kind of money that the baby boomers have either. I mean, throughout the U.S., I don't know about the rest of the world, but throughout the U.S., they are in the 25,000 a year, so they couldn't possibly accrue the kind of stuff that, or accumulate the kind of stuff that the baby boomers accumulated. And
yeah.
quite frankly, they don't even find it very interesting. They would never think to do a Hummel collection, or like I said, a Royal Dalton collection, or,
No,
and I tell them not to think about it. But
exactly.
I
I
don't think
mean,
they'll ever be able to afford that.
in many ways, they've got their priorities right. It's
Yes.
simpler living, living with less, and focus on what matters most. In whether it's interior design or lifestyle design, it all boils down to what matters most to you. In my lifestyle design and in my book, I talked about the why that makes you cry. So that's John Maxwell, actually. But I love that statement because when you can touch something in your heart that matters so much to you, nothing's going to get in your way.
That's right.
So after my trip to Senegal and living in my son's hut for a month, when I came back, I had been so deeply touched by people who had nothing but they were happy. And that's what I wanted. And that
Hmm.
sounded like an oxymoron coming from a designer, right? That you should want nothing. But, I gave away 95% of my stuff and I'm living on 5%, and I've never been happier.
Yeah,
So,
because we don't have to worry about it. You don't have to dust it. You don't have to clean under it. It's
yeah,
just so much easier doing it
yeah.
that way. So
Well,
much easier.
there's freedom and there's peace.
Yes.
And really, isn't that what we all kind of want? you
Both.
know,
Yes.
so
We want them
peace of
both.
peace of mind where you don't have to take care of all of that extra stuff, when I had my big house, I would spend every single weekend, in the yard or something around the house. I had no time, I had no money, and I had no freedom. And I didn't realize it, how much it was bearing down on me. But when you don't have a life, that's really what it is. And so
Yeah.
that's why I speak all over the country about this, because it matters so much to me that people at least consider, do they really want all of that stuff? And they might say yes. And many people said, it really matters to me. Great. But then there's another audience that is kind of on that, I don't really want all this stuff anymore. What do I do with it? How do I downsize? Where do I live? All of that. That's like a whole lifestyle shift for many people. And it occurs at different times of your life too. So you could become an empty nester. And that's when you start to say, do we really need this big house anymore? Or you could become widowed. And you would say, I don't know, this house reminds me so much of when we were married, so I want to have a different kind of house. Or it could be a financial situation where a job loss. So there are reasons and stages of life that people do downsize or move. But when you discern, that I want to do this because, and that really matters to you, then nothing's going to stop you.
Wow, Rita, I just want to thank you so much for your time today. I could just sit and talk to you for hours. I think you've given us all so much information, and I really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much. So everyone, I hope that you got some really good insight into what you can do to downsize, or what you can do to make your house more livable so that you can enjoy the privacy in your own home. And thanks for being with us today. I look forward to seeing you next week. Take care.